This is Beanie Man. Give it to them. Zaga, Zen.
From every whisper to every commotion.
That's rubbish. The KSAMC cannot investigate itself.
Was Click News really talking like that?
Every news story unfolds here first at Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Every sound is a story, and every story we share is news.
Tune in to our program live from our YouTube channel, Nationwide 90 FM. And remember to like, subscribe, and share our content. And we're also on WhatsApp at 876-285-5693.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be. Respecting your rights. Respecting human rights. What a wonderful nation this could be. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls.
It is Monday. It is 1 p.m. You are on Nationwide 90 FM. That means you're listening to Let's Talk Justice with Jamaicans for Justice. I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at Jamaicans for Justice.
And I know you're expecting to see Mikel Jackson here, but I'm Nicholas Richards, Community and Engagement Officer at JFJ, just filling in for a little bit.
Yes, Mikel is off on her work-related travel duties, so we are here holding down the fort today. And as a result, well, not even as a result, we're getting into the last quarter of the year now, and we are coming up to some important dates as it relates to human rights, both in international spaces and here in Jamaica. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about human rights generally, what they are, where we find them in Jamaica, what our framework is like, and we'll also...
Right, so I don't know if a lot of people know, but Jamaicans for Justice is actually in their 25th year. Jade, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a long time to me.
It is a long time.
Like a quarter of a century,
yes.
Right? So because it's our 25th year, Jamaicans for Justice, we have a lot of big things in store. So we have our Run for Rights, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail within the show. And then we'll also have our Justice for All Expo. So enough things are going on.
Absolutely. So this episode, we will be doing lots of giveaways. So there will be no right of the day today because we're going to be talking about multiple rights. And there will be no trivia today. There will be 8 opportunities for you to win something in trivia questions over the course of the show. So tune in, and if you're responding to the trivia questions, you can respond in the chat on YouTube at Nationwide or on JFJ's YouTube stream, or you can send a WhatsApp message to 2397583. So we're just going to get into it. Well, actually, I wanted to make one statement before we got into everything. And that is to congratulate new head of crime and security at the JCF, DCP Richard Stewart, who is taking over for DCP Fitz Bailey. So congratulations on that appointment, and we're looking forward to seeing the work that you will build upon from DCP Bailey's tenure. All right, so we're going to go into it.
Right, straight into it. So, if you know about Jamaicans for Justice, you know we're a human rights organization. And we're always in the streets, right? With our outreaches, our
yes.
schools, all of that. And often when we're in the streets and we ask people, what are human rights? The basics of it. Other times it's surprising that they don't know what the human rights that we have are. Mm-hmm. So what are human rights, Jade? Tell me. Me know.
Okay.
Me know. Tell me.
All right. So when we think about human rights, we think about those things that are our entitlements and freedoms. That's how they are described in most documents that refer to human rights. So there are those entitlements and freedoms that you are born with. You have them by virtue of being human. All human beings have them. And they are non-discriminatory, so they will apply to everyone regardless of your status in life, your race, color, religion, so on and so forth. None of those things should matter.
And I feel like when people hear the definition, they take the word entitlement lightly. I feel like it's a weighty word, entitlement. It means this is supposed to be mine. You can't take it from me.
Absolutely.
In essence, you know? So with that, another question that we usually ask is, whose responsibility is it to protect human rights? Because when I speak to lots of persons, first thing them I gonna say is, my MP, my councillor, government police officers. So whose responsibility is it really to protect it?
They are not wrong. It does fall a lot on the state, and that's because the state have a lot of power, right? When you have these rights in the Constitution, and that's one of the things that we're going to explore, they don't protect themselves. You need laws to help to protect them. You need policy to help to protect them. You need offices to help to protect them, right? So the state does have a heavy responsibility to ensure that those things are in place. But then, of course, we have to look at the responsibility we have to each other. And in our constitution, it specifically says, in Jamaica's constitution that is, that we have that responsibility to uphold the rights of each person with whom we would interact. So it's on the state, yes, to put those systems in place, but it's also on each person to ensure that we are not infringing on the rights of other persons. Anyway, Nicholas, I spoke about the constitution. Where exactly do we find those human rights?
Well, in the Constitution, we have a nice little thing called the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, Section 3 of the Constitution. Yes? Right.
Section 13.
13. That's what I meant. Which explicitly lines out the different rights and freedoms that we're entitled to by virtue of being Jamaican citizens. So you want to go into some of those, or?
We can, but before we go into some of those, I'm going to ask our first trivia question for today, which is, when was the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms last amended? So Nicholas just said that Section 13 of the Constitution where our rights are found. When was it last amended? So Nicholas, what are some of the rights in that charter?
I'm glad you asked, Jade. I'm really glad you asked. All right, so we have the right to life, and security of the person, very important. We have the freedom of expression, We have freedom of religion, to believe what we want to believe, freedom of conscience. We also have the freedom of movement.
That sounds like enough different freedoms and so on and so forth.
When
you say freedom of movement, what do you mean?
It means that as a citizen, I should be able to move from A to B without being in fear for my life, or just being able to do that of my free will, as long as, because all of these come with caveats, that I'm not breaking the law or about to break the law.
Absolutely. Another one that you mentioned just now was the right to freedom of expression, and this is one that I think we covered it on the show pretty extensively when we spoke to that Kensington primary school case, where the court would have clarified that freedom of expression is not limited to speech, but also has to do with those things that go to the identity of a person.
Right.
And so that expansion was essential to ensuring that the understanding of freedom of expression that we'd want to see is here. I see a comment in...
news commentator shut down.
Yeah, news commentator has already won our first trivia question. So our team is going to reach out to you. within or be after the show, so either during the course of the show or after the show, they'll reach out to you with your prize. But we see a comment here that human rights in Jamaica are for the rich. And one of the challenges that we have is that the principles of human rights are very clear. They are to be non-discriminatory, they are to be participatory and inclusive, and therefore all persons should be able to not only participate in the creation of and upholding their rights, but also to be able to take up their rights if they feel as though they have been breached. And there can be instances of unequal application. We've seen many of those. We've spoken about a few of those on the show here before when we spoke to, for example, the protection of men and boys from sexual violence and how that is unequal in the law, right? So it is not necessarily that the rights themselves are built in such a way that they are not to be shared amongst all persons equally. It is that some of the times the systems that we put in place contradict how those rights can be taken up by our citizens. And that's why we have organizations like JFJ.
Like us.
To ensure that we can expand those things. Now, one of the things that is a theme in human rights is how they supersede every other thing. And that is one of the principles that is in our constitution as it relates to human rights, that whatever is in that Charter of Rights cannot be changed, cannot be abrogated by any law that is made subsequent to those rights being put in place. Now, that's a specific section in the Charter. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because that is the second of our trivia questions, and that is which section of the Constitution prevents your rights from infringement by Parliament. So you can send that response in the chat or respond to 2397583 via WhatsApp. First correct answer would win. Right? But we do have those protections in our Constitution.
Yeah.
So, Nick, I know one of the things that we are doing this year for our 25th celebration, or I want to say celebration, but
it is a celebration.
It's a celebration.
For sure.
Okay. One of those things is our run for rights, and I know that you have those in some themes. What are those? First of all, what is the run for rights? What is the run for rights?
Before we even get to the themes. All right, so people, I hope you're listening clearly. The run for rights, it's a big thing. It's an innovative thing. So it's the first that Jamaicans for Justice will be doing our Run for Rights 5K/run. And the prime reason for having this run is bringing awareness to various human rights issues. For example, issues of child rights, combating gender-based violence and domestic violence, climate justice, and broad human rights issues on a whole. So we will want to shine a light and bring awareness to those issues, right? So we will be having our 5K on Sunday, December 8th, 2024. Race start time is at 7 a.m. And it will start at the Police Officers Club. Now, I'm really excited about the route because I believe the route is pretty unique because I don't see we don't follow trends.
Okay.
So I feel like it's pretty unique. So we start off at the Police Officers Club and we go down and turn left upon East King's House Road and we go down to the Texaco Barbican gas station. Then we traverse up to Ligony Avenue, take that right turn. Then we go straight back down to Old Hope Road. Hope Road. And then we head back to Police Officers Club. So it's a very interesting route. You have a little hill, a little decline in the route. And I feel like it will be a good thing for the members, citizens of Jamaica to come together for a really good cause. Right? So as you mentioned,
yes,
the different areas. Now, another innovative thing about the run is each person will be able to run for the cause of their choice. So remember we said child rights, gender-based violence and domestic violence, climate justice and broad human rights. So if you know, you're a mother of two and you feel especially passionate about child rights, you can sign up the family to run for the cause of child rights. If you're a survivor of gender-based violence or domestic violence, bring your whole group and your gang together to run for this cause and bring everyone together. An important point, can't leave this out. So if you're an individual and you want to register, it is 2,000 Jamaican dollars. That's the contribution. Cheap, don't it?
Affordable.
Right. And if it's a team of 20 or more, if you're gathering the whole squad, the whole group, it's 1,500 per person. And, you know, Jamaicans for Justice, we're always on the ball, always going. Shout out to the digital media officer. Registration is now open. So if you go to any of our socials, that's JA for Justice on Instagram or Jamaicans for Justice everywhere else, X, Facebook, you can now register and sign up to be a part of a big, big thing. Wolipa info, I know.
Yeah, that was a lot, but I'm sure we'll recap it as we go through the show.
Right.
I know one of the things you said is that the run is split up into these themes. Part of the reason it is split in that way, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these are thematic areas in which Jamaicans for Justice not only does advocacy, but also provides our free legal services within.
Totally
So
correct.
I know you can run for broad human rights, which is what we were just talking about earlier, but you can also run for the child rights, the gender-based violence, and I think you said climate justice.
Yes.
All right, so when we return from the break, we're going to get into what those categories mean, delve into some of those rights specifically, and give you some more info.
Here's to the early risers, and we are here all-nighters, the go the extra milers, and let's do it until it works, workers. People who are powerful because they power through, day after day, challenge after challenge. You see, true power, it's not something you can buy or collect. It is something that starts on the inside, and you always know it when you see it. Sunshine Snack Peanuts, proud supporters of the powerful.
Have you just finished grade 11? Looking for a 2-year 6th-form pathway to earn overseas local certificate diploma and advanced diploma and get qualified to work locally and internationally? Register now. Start free 6th form at IIRQ Academy. Start our new 6th form program online or face-to-face classes in September. Choose between pathway 1, 2, or 3. Paid for by the Ministry of Education. For more information, call 876-322-4029 or visit 32 Hope Road, Kingston. Website www.iirq.org.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. Jade Williams, I'm joined by Nicholas Richards, and we are talking today about human rights and JFJ's 25th anniversary. Before we get back into the meat of the matter, I just want to say, for those of you who are participating in the trivia, and we are at trivia number 2, keep in mind that the Constitution was amended. And be sure that you're looking at an amended version of the Constitution before you answer. And also, just a hint for trivia number 2, the answer will be in the same section that the rights would be listed. So, but we need the specific section to answer that question, right? And reminder that the question was, what section of the Constitution prevents your rights from being infringed on by Parliament, right? So you can respond in the chat or you can respond on WhatsApp 2397583. Now, before the break, Nick was telling us all about the Run for Rights.
Right.
And he mentioned that these Run for Rights categories are around.
Can run for your cause.
You can run for your cause.
So we're going to talk a bit more of those different categories, just in a little bit more depth. So we mentioned the child rights. So Jade.
Yes.
You know, so we go to the schools, right? We're in the schools.
Yes, we are.
And something we will stress and go through a lot in the schools, or what comes up a lot, is you get this sense from the students some of the times. You know, they're looking at you with this dead look. Why is child rights important to me? Like, why are you spending these 2-3 hours coming to us, talking to us about child rights and all of this stuff and the child diversion program and this ABC, you know? So tell us. Tell us, why is child rights important?
You know, I don't even have to tell you. It is something that is coming from long international consideration. Jamaica, we would have signed on to our Convention on the Rights of the Child. And as a nation, when we did that, we would be agreeing that we believe that every child has the right to protection as a child. We are acknowledging that children are more vulnerable than other members of the society and therefore need specific protections. And we are also acknowledging that children may have, in situations, for example, where they're in conflict with the law, a greater ability to be rehabilitated. And so we would need specific programs in place to address those issues. So they're important because we know that our children are the future.
Right.
And in order to protect that future, we would need to ensure that the rights they have as they are growing up and developing as children are actually there to protect their well-being. So where can we find our child rights here in Jamaica? You tell me.
I feel like this is time for the trivia.
No. Well, one of the things that we did, we have two things, right? In the Constitution, we have a right to every child for protection as a child and also to education at the pre-primary and primary levels. And then we have our Child Care and Protection Act and we have our Education Act. And one of the things with the way that Jamaica constructs our rights is that they're in the Constitution, yes, but we also need those laws in place to help to protect them. So we have that Child Care and Protection Act to protect the right to the protection of the child, and we also have the Education Act to protect the right to the child for education in those circumstances, right? Pre-primary and primary levels. Now, Jamaicans for Justice, in our advocacy, we would have seen room for improvement, particularly with the right to education in the Constitution itself that could be expanded to include maybe even high school.
Secondary, I feel like...
Secondary, I don't think is pushing it too far. I don't think we're pushing it too far. You know, but we also would have seen several recommendations made to the Child Care and Protection Act over the years. Some of them instituted, some of them not. But before we get into those, I'm going to ask, trivia number 3, when was the Child Care and Protection Act enacted? So which year was it put in place? And all you need is the year. I still haven't gotten a correct answer to my trivia number 2. So we are looking out for that answer still.
Zanado experience is trying. You're trying. You're not quite there yet, but you're trying.
You're trying. We need a little bit more detail than that. All right. But we have seen some child rights issues over the years.
And JFJ has been pretty vocal on some of those issues.
Yes.
So, for example, one of the issues that we've seen is corporal punishment, the ban on corporal punishment.
Or the proposed.
Right. The conversation about a ban on corporal punishment. Yes. So, it has been banned in schools so far.
Well, what we have seen is... in the Child Care and Protection Act, is certainly banned in places of safety. In schools, we would have had a policy that came out from the government that states that children should not experience corporal punishment. I think it's also in the Education Act regulations. However, we wanted to see a bit more. We were looking for a total ban. And that's from JFJ's perspective.
And why do you think a total ban is important?
You know... It is not, and I like to always bring my sources because I don't want people to think that we just come up with these things, right? But when the government put the National Violence Prevention Commission together, they would have come out with a report. Maureen Sansvan ran that committee. And in that report, one of the major recommendations was a total ban on corporal punishment. And the research has shown, and it's not just from her, criminologists have shown similar research, that children who experience violence in this manner tend to perpetuate violence in adulthood. So we see increases in crime rate and violent behavior, but also perpetuate that violence in their relationships. So we see more instances of domestic violence, which is a huge issue in our country in terms of numbers. So that recommendation to pull back on the corporal punishment was not only for the immediate well-being of the child, because of course it has its risks in terms of the abuse that the child might experience, the physical harm that the child might experience, but it was also to ensure that the child would be able to have a proper psychological development that would overall, in terms of their research, reduce the amount of violence that we're seeing in our society. So we have supported that recommendation and will continue to support that recommendation.
So my challenge to you, all right? So let's say we're on the road, community, right? In a community. And a mother comes up to you, you know, and she asked about it, and she's, you know, typical Jamaican gung-ho, you know, don't spare the rod and spoil the child. You know, that biblical verse
that's not what it said, but okay.
Paraphrasing, of course.
Yes.
We're not a Bible study. We're paraphrasing. Right? So what would you say to her as your rationale for our stance?
As much as I would want to rationalize with her, and I would try, with the same things that I've told you, I can also acknowledge that there is the possibility that the parent is simply not in the frame of mind to accept such a drastic change in behavior. So even with the recommendation that we see a complete ban, we were also quite insistent that
there has to be social intervention.
There has to be a transitionary period as well, because what you don't want is that you are criminalizing these parents who are simply trying to control and ensure that their children are developing normally, right? So we have to provide them with the tools to ensure that they can transition out of that kind of reaction, and also those social support programs. But I don't want to spend all our time on child rights. So we're going to ask our fourth trivia question now, which is, how many juvenile correctional facilities are there in Jamaica? I see news commentator trying to help out in the chat. I'm not going to say anything until my producer tells me who to acknowledge. But yes, our current trivia question, how many juvenile correctional facilities there are in Jamaica? Now, these are not remand centers. I want the correctional facilities.
We also do have our winner for trivia number 2.
Okay.
Yes, so news commentator J.A. coming in again. Yes. So the question was, which section of the Constitution prevents your rights from infringement by Parliament? And the answer is Section 13, Chapter 2B.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Section 13, subsection 2B of the Constitution would state that Parliament shall pass no law that abrogates those rights that are in that Section 13. I'm also seeing a correct answer to trivia number 3 from the Xanadu experience.
Finally get it. Love it.
So this one was, when was the Child Care and Protection Act enacted? And that was 2004. So the Xanadu experience, I hope my producer is paying attention, will reach out to you with your prize as well.
We also have trivia number 4's answer as well.
Wow. Okay.
Now come in now, ready. All right.
So Angela, what was the answer, Nicholas?
The answer is 3 correctional facilities are in Jamaica currently.
Do you know what they are?
I don't, tell me.
Okay, so they're the Rio Coburg Juvenile Correctional Facility. Look how I was big and confident and I've forgotten it now. I know Miracle Bra is definitely one of them, right?
Angela Greaves, if you give us the 3, we give you our next 2 bills credit.
Okay. All right.
Homework.
So, Nicholas, what is the other theme in this Run for Rights? Quickly before the break.
So the other theme is gender-based violence and domestic violence. So that's a cause that you can run in support of. We're really trying to combat those issues in our society.
What is domestic and gender-based violence?
All right. Domestic and gender-based violence. So domestic violence is... So gender-based violence comes under domestic violence. Let me just tackle gender-based violence first. So gender-based violence is violence that you experience by virtue of your gender, right? Whilst domestic violence is any violence, and this includes mental, physical, emotional, and financial violence that you experience from anyone within your household, right? So it could be you and your spouse, could be you and your father, you and your uncle, you and Right?
Yes,
That
anyone
sort of
within the
thing.
household, right? Now, I know we have a Domestic Violence Act here.
Right.
Jamaicans for Justice has been very vocal in wanting to see some recommendations, some changes, some improvements made to the Domestic Violence Act. One of the challenges that we have, like, you just nicely tell us domestic violence is the violence they experience in the home, and it can be different kinds. It can be physical and sexual and emotional and so on. The Domestic Violence Act does not have that in place. So the act is there. It doesn't say what domestic violence is. And what we found is that it makes it difficult for those persons who are trying to actually use the legislation to help people experiencing domestic violence to identify the actions that they should be bringing to the court, right? So we made the recommendation to see an improvement in how domestic violence is defined in the Act and an extensive definition that would include those types of violence as well. Now we are coming up on the break, so before we take the break, we'll ask our fifth trivia question, which is, when was the Domestic Violence Act last amended? The last time it was amended. You only need to give us the year, and as I said, you can respond in the chat on YouTube or 2397583. So we'll take the break and we will be back shortly.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
34 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 32 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay.
Catch the E-Zone with me, the Stinger Honeybee, alongside
Kareem Boy thing.
as we turn up the heat
in the street. New show.
New vibes.
Same us.
Same us.
Monday to Friday, 3 to 5
p.m. Right here on Nationwide 90 FM.
We'll bring you entertainment news.
We'll take away your Monday blues.
You don't want to miss a week with us.
We'll talk health.
Well,
jump into the mix.
Or the hot seat.
Don't miss the brain buster.
Or the crazy giveaways.
I mean, is this planet Earth?
Is it?
I don't know. Let me check. Either way, it's got a buzz.
And a bugger thing.
Ow.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We've been on our human rights episode, JFJ 25th anniversary episode, giving you all the information about Run for Rights and our other 25th anniversary activities, but also about some of the rights that are in our constitution here in Jamaica. And we're talking about gender-based violence now. And you know, earlier, Nicholas, you mentioned the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. And this is one of the rights that is protected, for example, by the Domestic Violence Act, by the Offences Against the Person Act, by the Sexual Offences Act, all of which have provisions in place to prevent others from harming you physically, whether that's sexually or emotionally or whatever, and protecting that right to life, liberty, and security of the person. So we were talking about domestic violence. What are some of the challenges that you've seen over the time you've been at JFJ that affect those persons that are experiencing domestic violence?
Well, it's a very... I'm trying to find the right word. But the challenges differ from person to person, and they're very far-reaching. But in interacting with different clients during this work, for persons experiencing gender-based violence, well, one, they usually don't know the avenues available. So lack of information, right? So they don't know the avenues available to help in possibly getting out of that situation. And then it's also a nuanced thing because victims usually of gender-based violence, they usually have a high level of dependency on the other person, the perpetrator of the violence. So it's trying to get the person that you're in dialogue with to have some kind of autonomy so that they would be in a better position to be able to free themselves from that experience.
Yeah, that's true. I know that one of the things that we've had to do at JFJ, as much as we look at the legislative reform, there is always the need for us to address the psychosocial issues. And we've had to lean on our partners for that because we're no psychologists, right? But we'll get a client, we have to do a referral to ensure that that client receives that psychosocial support so that they're in the frame of mind to be able to take up their rights, right? I know that one of the things that we have been heartened to see as it relates to the response to domestic violence, and we've partnered with them quite extensively in this, is the Community Safety and Security Branch and their Domestic Violence Intervention Centers. Yeah. They have been integral in ensuring that even when we get clients that need to take it to the criminal side, we can say confidently that there are these officers there that have been trained that will be able to sensitively take these complaints. So we think that's a huge step in the response to domestic violence. And we do have an answer, though, from Errol Townsend on when was the Domestic Violence Act last amended. We only asked for the year, but he went above and beyond. But it was last amended in 2023. And we saw where the penalties under breaches of the orders, I'm not going to say what the orders are, the breaches of the orders were updated in that amendment.
I think it's actually Radley Boy that won that trivia question with 2023. Can just confirm in studio, but I think it's Radley Boy that won it.
Okay, so Radley Boy won it. My bad. All right, so we have another.
Right. So Jamaicans for Justice, we do offer legal services. So we do help a lot of the clients that are experiencing gender-based violence in the process of getting certain orders.
Yes.
Now that brings us to trivia number
6.
Right.
So
which is
what are the two main orders under the Domestic Violence Act? So we're not going to tell you what they are, but you can list them in the chat or respond via WhatsApp as you have been doing. First correct answer will win. Right. But once it is that you answer that, we'll come back to them, right? We don't want to give away anything.
Right. So now the third...
well, it's actually the fourth because we started with general human rights.
Right. So the fourth thematic area that we mentioned was climate justice. Right? So climate justice. A lot of the times we wonder why is this important as well.
You tell me why it's important.
Well, I mean, we see it outside us. I don't know about you. At the very basis, I don't know about outside us. Yeah. Because of the greenhouse gases and global warming and all of that thing. All of those things. And it ties back into the young. Ties back into child rights as well. They are the future, as you said before. And it is our responsibility as humans living on this earth to operate and live in a sustainable way so that we have an earth that can sustain the future generation that comes after us. So we really need to be mindful in our activities, right? And I'm not just talking to the everyday man, but it also goes to the big corporations that also need to take responsibility for the gases they're putting out, for their emissions, their contribution, to those different greenhouse gases.
You know what I say though? Climate justice, especially in Jamaica's context, is much wider than just global warming.
Right.
Because we have seen, actions that affect our environment or living environment here. Now, in our constitution, we have a right to a healthy and productive environment.
Yeah.
And that means that we should be able to have clean water, clean air, our ecology should be flowing, it should be building, right? So we have several of those protected areas here, like our corporate country, the Blue Mountain and John Crow Mountains. So those areas require ecological protection, right? But we would have also seen several breaches or supposed breaches of our right to a healthy and productive environment. I know one of the challenges that have been repeatedly brought up is the issue of fish kills, where there have been, for example, illegal dumping in water bodies, or there has been waste products entering into the water ecological system, causing thousands, hundreds of thousands of sea life to die and float to the surface. Now, that's not only a problem for those who would be catching the fish for livelihood, right? Not only a problem for those who would be eating the fish as a part of their sustenance, but it's also a problem for the overall ecology of the water in which the fish would live and in which other animals would be spawned.
Right, because, I mean, it is a food chain, essentially, as we talk about the different species and different organisms within the water. And any disruption across that chain, it has far-reaching effects, you know?
Yeah.
I remember, on a separate note, we went to St. Thomas because we did a police training, guys. We also train police officers. We do that too. And I remember saying to you, I remember showing you actually this huge heap of dump, probably taller than the Air Jamaica building, of bottles. So like, what kind of effect could that have on our environment?
No, for sure. And we've seen some of those challenges with, for example, Riverton, because if there is waste that was dumped within the dump that should not be there, we might end up with fire hazards, which it's going to be difficult to put it out in such a situation.
Right.
One of the other things that we've seen quite frequently is bauxite mining and the results of that. I know last year and the year before, we spent a lot of time in areas like Wat Town in St. Anne, and Gibraltar, where the bauxite mining effects have been quite severe on the residents there, just based on our observation. The water systems there are completely contaminated, as there's no running water. So all these catchments are contaminated with the dust. Their plants, many of these people are farmers. A lot of their crop is suffering due to the amount of dust that is in the air that settles onto the plants as they're trying to grow them. And that lack of access to clean air, clean water is what has pushed these persons to be bringing a matter in the Supreme Court now against the bauxite mining companies. And the matter is essentially stating that they're breaching that right to a healthy and productive environment. So I am hoping to see a good result coming out of that matter, especially for the health and wellness of those persons. You know, having been there myself, just to see the amount of dust in the air layering my skin as I'm walking around, I can't imagine that those persons that are living there are able to breathe properly for once. Right,
and we need to like send a charge to Jamaicans, because you know, usually, and I am guilty of it sometimes, if something isn't affecting us directly, you know, it's out of mind, out of sight. So we really need to be mindful of those who are experiencing these, you know, harmful circumstances, and be mindful in how we operate, and then also help to keep the necessary parties accountable.
Absolutely. So we still haven't gotten an answer for trivia number 6. We are moving on to trivia number 7, which is, what does the acronym NEPA stand for? Right. So you can respond to that as well in our YouTube chat, in our WhatsApp, 239-7583. We are still waiting on an answer to number 6, which was, what are the 2 main orders under the Domestic Violence Act? We're still waiting on that. If we don't get the answer in another minute or so, we are going to have to tell you, because we need to talk about what those orders are before the end of the show. We did.
I'm seeing it now. I don't know if this is the first one, but I'm seeing news commentator JA, a protection order and occupation order.
Well, I'll allow the producer to tell me who the winner was, but those are correct. So I appreciate that quick response from news commentator. But yes, so protection orders and occupation orders. In Jamaica now, we have these protection orders that are similar to what they have in other jurisdictions called restraining orders, right? But we don't have restraining orders. But what the protection order essentially does is something very similar. It prevents a person for who the order is gotten against from coming to certain places, from interacting with another person, from interacting with that person's children, and so on. So your workplace, places that you are regularly known to go, like your hairdresser and your supermarket and those kinds of things. All of those places can be included in the order as areas that are restricted from the person that get the respondent to the applicant, right? So when it is that a protection order is in place under our Domestic Violence Act, it can last for up to a year. It can be shorter than that, but it can be as long as a year. And where it is breached, this was one of the things that was changed last year in 2023 in that last amendment. It has increased now the fine for when a protection order is breached from $10,000 to $1 million. And it has also increased the length of imprisonment from 6 months to a year. So that is an improvement that we wanted to see. We have some more recommendations on that as well, but we'll wait to see what the committee says. We've presented those to them. Okay. And the last thing I'll say is that under the Domestic Violence Act, we have occupation orders which have to do with the household. So we're going to take the break, and when we come back, I'll explain that, and then we'll go into our last segment.
Good health starts with proper hydration. Hydrate your body with Hydrate. Hydrate is purified natural water from rocks 110 feet below the ground. You have never tasted water so great, yet so affordable. Yes, taste and experience it for yourself. Water at its best. Hydrate. Available also as purified alkaline water and ultra-purified distilled water. Bottled by LLNSCS Limited, a subsidiary of Max Pharmaceuticals. Call 876-983-6466.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We have been talking all about human rights in the context of our upcoming Run for Rights. And we're in the last part here talking about climate justice. And we just asked our trivia question, what does the acronym NEPA mean? Now, we did see some answers in the chat, so I can tell you what the acronym means. It means National Environmental Planning Agency. Now, I don't know who the winner is, though. So when I get who the winner is, I will let the listeners know. But yes, before the break, we spoke briefly about the orders under the Domestic Violence Act. And I just wanted to finish up on the occupation order. And that is there to ensure that where a household has an abuser, the applicant, the person being abused, can go to the family court and have that person removed from the household.
So what if I'm at my house?
Even if it is not your house and even if it is their house, they can be removed from the household by the court. And this goes back to, as we said, your right to life, security of the person, freedom from harm, right? If you are being abused, the court is going to have to put in place those provisions to ensure that you are protected. It is not their right being threatened, it is yours, right? So even if they own the property, unfortunately, you can be removed by an occupation order, or better yet, fortunately, right? All right, so we have one more question related to climate justice. And that last one is on the Paris Agreement. When did Jamaica ratify the Paris Agreement? That's trivia number 8. So if you get that, that's the last one for today. So if you get that answer correct, then that will be right. But part of the reason why the Paris Agreement is important is that it is one of those things that have helped small island developing states to address some of the issues that we did a show on this, but one of the issues is that we are disproportionately affected as a small island developing state by the actions of larger countries, companies, entities. And those actions cause our sea levels to rise, cause heat in our environment, cause additional hurricanes, destruction of infrastructure. Of course, we are not producing the amount of GDP to address all of these issues. So one of the things that the Paris Agreement does is has these international entities, countries, commit to supporting small island developing states as we go to address the impact of these negative climate actions that have been taken, right? So it's important that we're a part of it, and we're glad to be a part of it, I'm sure. And we are seeing answers in the chat for when it was ratified. The correct answer is April 11, 2017. And I'm sure our producer will let us know who was the winner. Now, keep in mind, if you are on YouTube and you have responded correctly, you must send a message, either WhatsApp or text or something, to 239-7583 to make it easier for us to send your prize. So please do so now if you have not already. All right. So we do have one more thing to talk about in this 25th anniversary celebration.
Right. So, remember at the beginning we said it's big stuff this year, right? A lot of activities that we've been doing since the start of the year, going into different schools and communities. And we also went through the Run for Rights, but we also have another big thing. On Human Rights Day, December 10th, 2024, that is a Tuesday if I'm not mistaken. So we will be having our Justice for All Expo, right? And we will be joined in Emancipation Park by a number of our partners. And Jamaicans for Justice, we recognize the importance of community and partnerships, which is why we've, went ahead to continue to strengthen our partnerships with our partnering agencies, to have them there, as well as have the citizens of the country come out so that we can, again, shed a light and have a real impactful conversation about the human rights issues that is affecting our country, right? So from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. on December 10th, we will be there. Yes, man. We're out and stunting, right? So we'll be out, there. It will be a day of vibes, a day of fun, a day of impactful conversations. We will have different service providers there. I can't disclose yet, but stay tuned to our social media for the different service providers that will be joining us there on the day. We'll have performances. So it should be a good day, an impactful day. And I encourage everyone, once you're a Jamaican, if you're not a Jamaican even, come out, because it's going to be an event that you'll want to be a part of. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas. Now, I think I have a few trivia announcements to make. Let me just double check here. So if I didn't say, for trivia number 6, which was the orders, that was news commentator JA. For trivia number 7, which was the agency, NEPA, it was Angela Greaves. And for trivia number 8, news commentator, again, news commentator said I forgot to take a break next week.
I'm study for that show, clearly.
My bad, it's a she. Okay.
Yes,
so she did excellent this week. And I think that clearly she's learning.
Right.
All right. So I think if I'm going to talk about one more thing, it has to be the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights last week would have released a press release in relation to Jamaica's use of states of emergency. Now, if you know JFJ over the past couple of years, you know our position on this. And not just our position on this, but also the position of the Supreme Court coming out of Everton Douglas et al. A few years back. But essentially, we support the statement coming from the IACHR. We have continuously put our advocacy behind the fact that our constitution made specifically clear what circumstances constitute an emergency that warrants a state of emergency to be in place. And none of those circumstances would have occurred as judged by the Supreme Court and again in the Court of Appeal for us to have called same. And again, we urge our government to put in those sustainable solutions to crime fighting and not just focus on draconian response legislation. We've been very clear on that and we'll continue to reiterate that going forward. But it was good to see something coming out of our regional bodies on this human rights issue.
And for those listening, what is, because a lot of us, we might not understand what the dangers that lie with, the government deciding to have that response of implementing states of emergencies when they do. So what are the potential dangers that lie?
Well, I think what we always have to look at is that a state of emergency is a period in which our rights are suspended, many of them, right? And it's not to say that they are never necessary, because that is why the mechanism exists in the Constitution, and that is why it exists for those specific crazy circumstances like war and famine and so on, right? But when it comes to a high crime rate, that is not necessarily a reason for us to be abrogating our rights to such an extent, right? We have to consider, if we make abrogation of rights routine, is it that we'll get them all back? Right? And we look at places like El Salvador, for example. We look at places like Singapore, which are often called on with seriously authoritarian governments. And while persons will say in the first 2 years or so, yes, we're happy to see these changes, eventually, as the rights don't come back, these abrogations of rights start to affect even those persons who have done nothing wrong. Right? So when it is that we say we want to see our rights maintained throughout, and why it is that they are so hard to abrogate in the Constitution is because of these things. Right? So again, happy to see that from the IACHR. But we move forward, right? So we are coming up onto the end of the show now. We have seen, I think it was a good show. We have seen several responses to our trivia questions. So I'm just going to go over what those questions were, what the answers were. We had, when was the Charter of Rights last amended? That was 2011. That was a pretty extensive amendment as well, coming out of years of recommendations, and it could have been better, And we are now in our constitutional reform process, and these rights have that potential to be expanded even further to see greater protections in the Constitution. So we'll continue to push for those recommendations as well. Another question that we had was, which section of the Constitution prevents your rights from being infringed by legislation coming out of Parliament? And that is section 13(2)(b). That's why you would have seen, for example, our national identification legislation be severely changed after 2018, as it would have infringed some of the rights that we had in the Constitution. And that section 13(2)(b) prevents any legislation from doing that. Of course, we have, what are the orders under the Domestic Violence Act? We have protection orders and occupation orders. And as Nick said, you would be able to come to JFJ if you feel as though you are in need of those orders, and we'll be able to assist you to get them free of cost. We have attorneys on staff that do exactly that. I see someone asking in the chat, reshare the number for those who have won outdoor trivia episode. So for those of you who have won in the trivia, you can send a message to 876-239-7583. So you can send a text, or you can send a WhatsApp to let us know that you have won, and we will pass on that prize to you.
Right. So we're coming up to the end, Jade.
We are at the end, Nicholas.
So just before we go, just to remind you guys that our Run for Rights 5K registration is now open. right? So you can go to our social media pages. You can call us at 755-4524, and you can seek more information. If you're a Jamaican, if you're living in Jamaica, this is something that you are supposed to be a part of, right?
You're going to be running it?
I will be there. And I think I'll be doing a little more on the coordination side, but I'll be running with everybody in spirit. I trust that you'll be right up at the front, leading the charge.
Okay. Right? Oh, I just wanted to say to Angela, who gave us the correctional facilities, don't worry, our producer will reach out to you with your prize. We see your answer, so our producer will reach out to you with the prize. So what you say, running for rights. When is the run for rights date again?
Sunday, December 8th. I can't repeat it enough. Sunday, December 8th.
All right.
So come out, child rights, gender-based violence. Not 7 p.m. No. Race time, 7 a.m. You warm up from 6:30 a.m. Come out, Police Officers Club.
All right, so you can check our social media for further information about that. We'll be covering it over the next couple of weeks along with many other things. So keep in touch with us, and we'll be back next week, same time, 1 p.m.
All right, I won't be here, but they'll be back. All right, next week, man.
All right, so I'm Jade Williams.
I'm Nicholas Richards, and this is Let's Talk Justice.
Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many, we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
JP said Mary's banana chips. 20% more chips in the banana left on ground. The time by JP said Mary's banana chips is
2 o'clock.
Catch the E-Zone with me, the Stinger Honeybee, alongside
Kareem Boy,